It's not a matter of talent at the end, to survive. It's a kind of miracle. It's just pure luck to survive to all that. There were many very talented friends and people I have met before who didn't survive it because it's really a miracle to survive that era.
Do you ever stop and ask yourself why you survived and others didn't?
Pure luck. Because the margin between a dreadful accident and just an accident is very narrow. Very, very narrow. I'm very grateful to my guardian angel. I really gave him a very hard time. Originally, his feathers were white. At the end, I can tell you they were bloody gray.
Motorsport in the 50s and 60s was fueled by an insatiable passion for racing, but marred in tragedy, with the tracks and safety procedures failing to adapt to the constantly increasing speeds of the cars, contributing to a rise in the severity of crashes. This was a major risk to all drivers, a risk that had been ingrained and normalised within motorsport culture. Drivers were expected daily to confront the immense danger in a sport where driver safety had for the most part been a second thought to innovation. Forced to compete in a time when survival had more to do with luck than skill. Even the introduction of seatbelts was initially disregarded by drivers and spectators as a safety device, with some drivers still believing it be safer to be thrown out of a crashed vehicle and others believing those who use them to be sissies. Despite this, times were changing, and driver safety was beginning to be taken more seriously in the 60s. The formation of the Grand Prix Drivers Association and Formula One sought to give drivers more representation and lobby the FIA for safety improvements in the sport, leading to more movements for improving safety throughout motorsport, including proposals for a group of professional Grand Prix marshals, innovations of fireproof suits, research into the safety of harnesses and seatbelts in motorsport, and improvements into circuit and car design were all made in the 60s. Raising the standards of the sport as a whole. When it came to Le Mans and the World Sports Car Championship, there was one core issue impeding driver safety: the traditional Le Mans start. As the World Sports Car Championship evolved, simple lap belts had over time been replaced with tricky 6-point harnesses. Because of this, as drivers ran to their cars during a traditional Le Mans start, most delayed strapping themselves in until a lull in the on-track action, in an attempt to gain or maintain a better track position early on, disregarding their safety and prioritising the race in what was seen as a crucial point in the long endurance races. This left opportunities for major life-threatening accidents to occur. And they did. Leading up to the 1969 Le Mans, a slew of drastic crashes had tainted the sport. A major crash in testing left Henry Pescarolo seriously injured. During another practice, a fatal crash involving reigning Le Mans winner Lucien Bianchi ripped the sport of what was seen as a young and emerging talent. A year prior, at the start of the 1968 Le Mans race, Willie Maurice started the race without fastening his harness, combined with an unsecured door, culminated in a violent crash, placing the driver in a long coma. He would sadly take his own life a year later. The loss of friends and fellow drivers to severe crashes left Jacky Ickx with a bad taste for the upcoming 1969 Le Mans. With the race closing in, the drivers lined up across their cars, counting down the seconds to the start. Jacky stood across his strong yet aged Ford GT40 further down the grid and questioned his chances for the upcoming race. With chances of a strong performance looking slim and the thought of recent driver accidents weighing heavy on his mind, Jacky decided he would make a stand. As the clock hit 1400 and the tricolour waved, the grid sprinted to their cars. But not Jacky. Jacky walked, disregarding what was seen as crucial steps in gaining an initial advantage for the long race and sending the message that it was better to leave the grid safely rather than risk death. Jacky took his time walking to his GT40 and patiently buckled his 6-point seatbelt, leaving the grid in last place.
One of the John Wyer Fords got off to a very slow start. It's Jacky Ickx. Got a very slow start.
Despite seeing his protest, The message would truly be heard near the end of the first lap. As the lead drivers passed the start-finish straight, a large, ominous plume of smoke could be seen in the distance towering over the track. Just past the Maison Blanc bend, driver John Wolfe had placed two wheels of his Porsche 917 onto the grass and lost control, crashing into the barrier at high speed. He was violently thrown out of his car and died instantly. He wasn't wearing a seatbelt. A tragic event that proved that change was needed, and change was coming, but as was custom at the time, the race still had to be finished. Once the debris had been cleared, the race would continue for the next 24 hours, with Jacky Ickx rejoining at the rear and Porsche leading the way with the top 5 cars. By the 2-hour mark, Jacky Ickx and co-driver Jackie Oliver had made their way up to 13th place. After another 4 hours, they'd remarkably made their way to 5th place, thanks in part to competitors with mechanical issues. Leading into the night, the pair would focus on consistent and safe driving as their competitors in the Porsche garages were struggling with reliability. As the night passed and the sun rose, the Ickx-Oliver combo had made their way up to 3rd. Now in a podium position, a slight hope for victory had emerged, despite being 8 laps behind the leader. With this new hope, the drivers were released from any engine restrictions and allowed to push hard in an attempt to close the gap. After some time, the driver pair would have some luck with the 2 lead Porsches suffering long pit stops, including one of them having to retire after suffering a clutch issue. This promoted Jackie Oliver driving the car at the time to 1st place. The duo were now being pursued by the only remaining Porsche piloted by Hans Hermann and Gerard Larousse. With 3 hours remaining, Oliver was called in for fuel, brakes and a driver swap. Ickx would rejoin behind the Porsche, but a few minutes later, the roles would be reversed as the Porsche pitted for fuel as well. The battle for the lead was heating up, with only a few hours remaining and both cars passing each other regularly. With the 2 leaders battling consistently, the crowd kept gasping in anticipation each and every lap to see who was on front. Jackie was driving his GT40 way over its limit for a slim chance of challenging the lead every lap. As the clock closed in on 1400, worries began to emerge about the fuel consumption for Jackie, as he had been pushing non-stop. These worries were enforced when the lead cars crossed the finishing line just 15 seconds before 1400 struck. This meant that an extra lap of 8 miles had to be done that had not been accounted for by the team. Luckily for the Ford team, the Porsche car was in the same situation. All the teams and pit crews could do now was wait to see who, if either of them, would round the last corner ahead. Tensions were high in the garage, and as the crowd cheered, they could finally see the lead cars exiting the final chicane. Jackie was ahead, leading with the Porsche nipping at his heels all the way to the finish line. Jackie would cross the checkered flag, with the Porsche only 120 meters behind, the closest finish in Le Mans history. After 24 hours, Ickx and Oliver had achieved the impossible, winning a drama-fueled and action-packed race with the thinnest of margins. The crowd was ecstatic, flooding the track in celebration. An incredible race that would mark the start of Jackie's illustrious Le Mans career, but also the end of the traditional Le Mans start. In the end, the fact that Jackie held his protest had no bearing on the outcome of the race, and demonstrated the pointless risk those drivers undertook each and every weekend, emphasised by the unfortunate passing of John Wolfe and all the other drivers who had been lost to Lap 1 incidents over the years. Just 1 year later, the World Sports Car Championship would replace the traditional Le Mans style starts with the standing start, and now uses rolling starts under the World Endurance Championship. Although some at the time were upset with the loss of the traditional start, it was now mandatory for all drivers to start with the seatbelt fastened, making the race fundamentally safer. The traditional Le Mans start has since been relegated to tradition, historical showcases, or modified for alternative starts. The 1969 Le Mans 24 Hours has since become legendary for the exciting race and incredible story that surrounds it, along with the major impact it had on making the sport safer.
It was present in those days, we knew it, but it was accepted as a fatality and also a freedom. The freedom to do what you want, to take the risks you want, and to assume your passion. before every Grand Prix, leaving home on Thursday, traveling to... Not one of us knew if he was going to be alive the weekend after. It was sometimes uncomfortable, but the passion at the end takes over all these considerations.